talk to Tudor and Steve about this. Joining me now, Tudor Dixon, host of the Tudor Dixon podcast, and Steve Cortes, founder of the League of American Workers. Okay, Tudor, you are in the freaking critical swing state of Michigan. This is a state Donald Trump really has to win, to be honest, to win the presidency. What should he say and what shouldn't he say tomorrow?
Well, if it were only that easy, I mean, that would be great if he's allowed to say certain things. The concern is that they're only going to ask questions that are twisted in a way that he can only answer a certain way. And so that's where the masterful media genius that Trump is has to come into play, because he has to be able to take their question, flip it, and put the answer that he wants out there. And for people in Michigan, that's going to be the cost of gas. That's going to be the cost of groceries. And that's going to be safety. We were just listed as the second most violent state in the country. People are looking for common sense and security, personal safety to come back into play. That's what they're going to want to hear from Donald Trump. They're scared about what's happening at the border. They're scared about what's happening overseas. They want an adult back into office, and they want to see him as an adult come out and say, I will take care of you.
Gosh, I can't believe we're at a place where Michigan is the second most violent state in the country. Jeez. Steve, you've dug into this, as you always do so brilliantly, and you say there are three issues that he should just hammer Joe Biden with. What are they?
Yes, and I wrote an article about this at Daily Caller, if any of the audience wants to see more specifics, but cognitive ability, the cognitive impairment of Joe Biden, but with a major caveat, because he cannot look like he is bullying him. I believe that Donald Trump should say, listen, millions of Americans are dealing with these same kinds of issues or dealing with them with their parents and grandparents. This is not your fault, Joe Biden. The border and inflation are your fault. Your cognitive impairment is not your fault. However, it is clear that you cannot handle the most difficult job in the world. And then the next two issues are, Jesse, the two I's, inflation and immigration. And poll after poll, including polling that my organization has done in the state of Michigan, these are far and away the top two concerns on voters' minds. Hammer both of those points home and be tangible. When it comes to inflation, what I recommend is use dollar figures rather than percentages. People understand dollar figures. For example, Biden's own USDA, Department of Agriculture, so-called thrifty plan of a frugal grocery plan for a family of four. When he took office, it was $675 a month. It's now $975 a month. So say the dollar figures, $75 extra per month for a family of four trying to be frugal in Michigan. And when it comes to immigration, I think they're also, again, be tangible. Don't just speak in theory. Talk specifically about Lake and Riley. What my polling has shown in all of these swing states is that the more voters are aware of the absolute tragedy, the preventable tragedy of Lake and Riley, the more likely they are to say that they're voting for President Trump.
Okay, well, just to follow up with that, though, Steve, you talked about Biden's cognitive function. I agree with you about the other two things, but you say Trump should address this, but do it carefully. Okay, come on, the bull can't handle fine china. Let's be honest, Trump is really good at some things and not so good at other things. You're going to ask Donald Trump to kind of delicately tap dance around an issue? My word, come on, man, you know he can't.
Jesse, I did not say he's going to do that. I said that is what he should do. Based on both my own intuition and read of the situation, plus what polling shows us. Speaking of that, though, as long as we're on this topic of where Trump shouldn't go, but he probably will, he shouldn't talk about 2020. And listen, I join him. I have enormous problems with the way 2020 turned out and was handled and was abused, frankly. The voting procedures and rules of the states were abused. However, right now, in summer of 2024, it does not behoove him to talk about it. It does not behoove him to bring it up, particularly in front of millions of voters who are not aware of the many problems, the legal and constitutional problems with the way the 2020 election was handled. Instead, it looks like a sore loser. So stick to the two I's, inflation and immigration. Stay away from things that look like bullying and stay away from talk of 2020, even when it is warranted, in my view.
Let's talk, Tudor, about something he's not going to be allowed to stay away from. They are most definitely going to come at him about abortion. They're going to come at him about this because this is right now a winning issue for Democrats. American women love abortion the way toddlers love a stuffed animal that keeps them company at night. You know this all too well. So if you're Donald Trump and you know the moderators and Joe Biden are going to bring this up in the worst possible ways, how should he talk about it?
I think he should stick to what he said about it. He said, you know what, I want it to be a state's issue, and I'm not going to get involved. And in fact, I think it was last weekend, Gretchen Whitmer was on CNN. It's the station that is airing this debate, and she was asked about abortion, and she said, Donald Trump wants a national abortion ban. I will give CNN credit. The anchor came back and said, actually, that's not what Donald Trump is saying today. And I think that's what he has to stick with, because it's gone well with the states who don't want it. They don't have it. The states who do, they do have it. It's being decided by the people. And that's what Donald Trump should come out there and say. And it's a non-issue. They will try to catch him if he says anything else. I'll go back to something that Steve said about trying to show that Joe Biden is struggling with memory. I think he can do it in a way that people won't expect. He can say to him after he answers the question, well, Joe was struggling to get this out. We can see he's having a hard time remembering this. Joe, perhaps you didn't understand what happened when your policy went into place, but let me explain it to you. I mean, there's just a fact that he can point out that Joe isn't understanding exactly what his own administration is doing, and yet he does. He understands what he did, and he understands how to fix it.
Steve, explain this to me. If Joe Biden completely falls on his face, which I actually don't expect, we continue to think he's going to do this, and then they juice him up with a cocktail that would make Hunter S. Thompson die, and he goes out there and he's functional. He's not great, right? But he's functional. Yeah. But if he just goes out there and just poops his pants, are they going to just cut bait and dump the guy at the convention?
It would have to be terrible. Listen, I have said all along that I believe Joe Biden is the nominee, and he is going to be on the ballot on November 5th. And the main reason, by the way, and there's something sort of delicious about this, is that the left they have boxed themselves in by their own ridiculous rules. And what I mean by that is that they cannot, if they were to punt him, if they were to pass him over, they cannot then bypass Kamala Harris. They cannot pass over the black woman who is in the number 2 position based on the rules that they themselves have established, the ludicrous identitarian politics that the left lives by. And I think that these smart folks on the left, and a lot of them are sharp, okay, Jesse, they're evil, but they're sharp. I think they realize that Kamala Harris is an even worse candidate than Joe Biden. So I think it would take something truly remarkable and catastrophic from Joe Biden. And to your point, I don't expect that. And look, I think people know this who have people in their lives who are having these cognitive issues, elderly people. They can get up for certain moments, and they can get up for an hour and a half, which is all we're asking for here. He's been resting for an entire week at Camp David. My expectation is on the cognitive side, he'll actually be fine, which is why Donald Trump has to be prepared, though, to bring that issue up. Again, I think present it with empathy, not Trump's strong point, but try to do that. And then also, of course, hammer the macro issues of inflation and immigration as much as possible. Also, to Tudor's point about CNN, listen, they actually showed some fairness in some recent interviews, not entirely, of course. But I think that CNN, which has seen its ratings absolutely tank, when it comes to the demo audience, they're back at the levels of the early 1990s. I think that they're actually going to be surprisingly fair. I mean, maybe I'm giving too much credence and too much credit to those charlatans at CNN, but my guess is they're going to be reasonable on Thursday night. And if that's the case, Donald Trump's going to have ample opportunity to really lay out for the American people the stark policy differences between what life was like pre-COVID under Donald Trump and what life is like now in America under Joe Biden.